And I think as we continue to come together, hear about what's really going on, hear about those who are doing wonderful quality jobs at making dents at it. And if we would begin to support those organizations or those individuals who are doing great things, we'll see even a greater change at an exponential rate here in Marion County.
Welcome to Marion Voices, a production of the Marion Forum Group. I'm Bob Ramer, the host of today's episode. Let me introduce today's guest. The Reverend James Stockton is the senior pastor of the Greater New Hope Church of Ocala and the presiding bishop of the Tabernacle of Praise International Church, that's TOPIC. His leadership spans the spiritual and community spheres. He is actively involved in advisory councils focusing on cultural education, affordable housing, and land development. He is the past chair of the Board of Governors of the Marion County Florida Continuum of Care on Homelessness. He has extensive experience with the impact of homelessness and with the demand for affordable housing across this area. Reverend Stockton, thank you for joining us today on the Marion Voices podcast.
Oh, it's an honor and a privilege to be here today.
We'd like you to share with us what's happening within the city of Ocala and throughout Marion County to identify and address the problems of homelessness. That's a pretty broad question.
Yes. Well, one of the things I will say, kind of giving a little historicity to it, is that about 7 years ago, I went to a meeting and posed a question. And that really is how my passion and concern for the homeless in our area and our region really sparked. Back then, 7 years ago, we had a wonderful organization called the Marion County Homeless Council. They were really kind of taking the lead and the charge of bringing passionate organizations together in dealing with this situation that we have called homelessness. I really believe that as they got involved in it and saw the real scope of it, and we began to see the scope of it through part of their lenses and part of the lens of different organizations, we realized that here in Marion County, we had a homeless issue that I won't say we weren't being effective, but it was like just a drop in the bucket type of effect. HUD, our federal government office, Housing and Urban Development, came along and through trial and error, and like any time, any governmental situation, it is trial and error, depending on who's in the White House or whatever, whatever their passions are. During that period of time, came up with the ideology nationwide called the Continuum of Care, where instead of different organizations bombarding HUD for dollars to help combat homelessness, that there would be like a centralized organization that would know really what the needs are in that continuum or in that community. Some continuums are just areas, certain like cities. Like I think Orlando has its own continuum. Orange County might have it separate. Tampa, Hillsborough, same. Bigger places might have more areas or less areas. Big Bend is like 5 counties altogether. Yeah. So Marion County is the county altogether. And so HUD said, okay, we're going to allocate certain amount of dollars. That allocation is determined by the pit count comes later, and we'll talk about that. Sure. But came through the census, things of that nature, counting, data collected from city and state and different municipalities. So then each continuum is given a number that should hopefully help do homeless work. And then you have those organizations that are actually on the ground doing the work. They would apply to the continuum, and the continuum would kind of like disperse out the dollars for those organizations to do the work. And that seemed to be a good answer. And I think it took us a little further. But then we saw that the need was even really greater than that. There needed to be a lot of data, research, strategy, strategic planning. How do we hone in some of the projects that we have that are not redundant? So someone couldn't go here for a service. Maybe let's say get food from program A, B, and C. And one thing we realized that food might not have been all they needed. It's the wraparound services that needed, and then mental health, job placement, because the HUD process is if you get a person housed, then you can kind of figure out what they need to stay housed. Yeah. And so that was even interesting in the beginning days because a lot of organizations felt like the person needed to be cleaned up before you put them in a house. And
sure.
So that growth, that tug of war, that was going on for a while, not that anyone was being, disingenuous or not passionate. We just had our own expressions of what we thought worked. And so it's taken time for data. Numbers don't lie. Processes don't lie, and I really believe with all of my heart that Marion County is on the right road to accomplish something because the fix was there's no such thing as a quick fix when it comes to homelessness. Sure. And a lot of times in the community, we'll see a person or a family or in some areas encampments of people and we're like, oh, we need to get them housed. Well, that's not as easy as, hey, just let's get them housed.
That's an answer that it can't always be a simple solution.
Just a simple solution. There's process. You have to find out why they're homeless first.
Sure.
And so believe it or not, why people are homeless, that is an array of reasons bigger than I never dreamed. I'd never dreamed that some of the reasons why people are on the streets or homeless are the reasons that they are, but they're legitimate reasons.
I'm looking forward to expanding on that at some point because I think for the audience and our listeners here, they will be as surprised as you and as surprised as I've been.
Definitely.
In a sense, what the consolidation did was make it so that one key opens all doors.
Okay.
But now that you've got that continuum,
right,
you have to coordinate. And as you were saying, even with the food. And then finally, with this coordination, each case is almost unique. And I mean, you were starting to touch on that because whether it's a group of people that have lost a rental or a home through a downturn of the economy, a veteran with PTSD, that list again goes on. Those are all different. Certainly, I think one of the things I've taken away from some of the reporting that's been done, and I know you're going to chime in on this, is that getting people shelter is kind of a key concept because at that point you can offer some of the other services that they may need as long as they have a place over their head where they're safe, less vulnerable, and avoid the impact of being without being homeless.
Well, even the shelter issue was a big thing for a while because where is that shelter?
Sure.
Where do you put that shelter? Sure. What does that shelter look like? Is it an encampment? Is it a big warehouse? Is it an actual shelter?
Some background. You were talking about the Ocala National Forest, and in a sense, there was a tent group.
Yes.
That were living there, and I know that there's been other instances where it's not necessarily on the street so much as where they ultimately have to go to find some sort of protection, whether it's the Ocala National Forest, whether it's our local parks, whether it's in their car. And so that's to your point. What kind of shelter for what purpose?
On one side, it's a misnomer on one side, and then on the other side, those who understand that, okay, how do you pay for it?
Sure.
Where is that going? What does that location look like? Do we build it out in the forest, but then all the services are in town? How do they get back and forth? Sure. So you never want to create a situation that's going to make a bigger situation. And Marion County, I will attest, and I stand on it, has done such a phenomenal job of And when I say behind the scenes, I say behind the scenes because the things that are being done are not always known and always up front. So the common person that just lives here in Marion is like, oh, I saw some homeless people on the street, but you don't know that we've created a coordinated entry. It's actual a term, and it's an office. It's a group of people called coordinated entry, where we have outreach workers that are literally going out to these families and giving them a VI-SPDAT, vulnerability index like survey.
Right.
And depending on where they survey, because funding's limited, depending on where they score on the survey, depending on what their needs are, we have a higher the need, the higher they are on the housing process, But then, where are these houses? Where are these homes? Where are these apartments? Who are these landlords? So it's a bigger mechanism than I was even aware of, all the nuances that it takes. And like I said, I believe that we're turning that corner, and we're seeing some great things happen, but it's taken 10 years almost to all get to a point where we're like, I can't just say, well, just buy on mats. Okay, where are you going to put the mats?
Yeah.
Where, showers, where,
There's no simple solution.
No simple solution.
I did like to recognize the point you made about the fact that the community doesn't often appreciate the amount of professional and volunteer work going into this, because they don't have a tendency, these various groups, and we can talk about some of them like the Interfaith,
Oh, yes.
Wear Gloves,
Yes.
Saving Mercy,
Yes.
even the Voices of Change for Animal League.
Yeah.
The work they're doing is not well known.
Well.
And it's often, as you said, not visible on the streets. Right. It's where they're finding people that have these needs. The other issue that you talk about is that listing, almost a flow chart of saying, we've identified you as having needs. Let's find out what we can address first. What's your highest need? In most cases, it could be shelter. But right behind that, for most of the people that are experiencing homeless, either chronic or temporary, there's some mental health counseling that they may need, or actual issues that they have to deal with. And whether it's something that can be counseling or medicine, their actual health in general, that all impacts how they feel about even being in a shelter.
Well, that was one of the interesting things, and took for a long time and a serious coordinated effort to get all of those people part of the continuum. HUD didn't say who has to be part of your board, but it kind of gives you like a pigeonhole chart of, who should be. Everywhere from the housing authorities, hospital authorities, police and law enforcement, mental health clinics, banking, realtors.
Sure.
All of these individuals need to be at the table having these conversations, because it's going to take the input and the know-how. My grandfather used to have this saying, and I've been using this saying in almost every aspect of my life. If people would operate in their own lane, there wouldn't be so many wrecks. And how does that equate to homelessness? Well, if the hospital districts or the hospital organizations, the millions of dollars that are spent on homelessness for people who are homeless that might have some issue, but might not really need to have an issue, but it's cold outside. I'll just go check myself into the emergency room.
Yeah.
And the emergency room can't turn them away, that could be, over a period of time, how busy the emergency room is. That could be a meal for them, a warm place to stay for them.
They need an intervention, not the emergency room.
Right. But in the beginning, there was not that collaboration. Right. Now that we have this joint office, and different ones over the years have realized, hospitals, if you're spending $10 million a year, I'm just making that number up. I don't know what it is exact. Well, maybe if you gave 5 to the continuum of care, we could create some kind of shelter system, which I'm glad that those types of things are starting to happen. But,
Sure.
Having mental health at the table, because there is that chronic, there are people who are homeless, but because of mental health will say, I have a home. It might be a box. It might be, a tent, or a spot behind in the woods somewhere. But to them, that's home. So putting them in an apartment or a house might not even be a good thing. I remember a case when I first came involved. We got a young man housed, but after a month or so visiting him there, he was still sleeping on the floor. Everything that was outside was inside now. It was just as if he was still out. And so now we have a landlord that's concerned about bugs and cleanliness and the condition of, does he want, or they want someone that's going to destroy the property in the home because we got them housed.
Right,
and so, on one side, we might want to pat ourselves on the back. We got somebody from the woods or whatever, wherever they were, into an apartment. But is it really sustainable?
A solution that's not working.
It's not working. So then that's why we had to have the different organizations of mental health. So there has to be case management. And that is something that, and I'm going to give a shameless plug to them now. Our coordinated entry, our outreach community workers, and you were saying all the behind the scenes, coordinated entry, case management, there's not really money for that. There's money to build a building, or I'll use that. But what it takes to sustainability.
Yes.
And that's where it took this continuum of care working together and reallocating how we spend dollars and rethinking and reimagining what it looks like. So I use the hospital district as a way off example. Well, if we're spending $10 million for homeless people just coming into the emergency room so they don't on the street, well, okay, we know we're going to spend that if we don't do something.
Right.
Well, let's take half of that for a year and apply it to a one-stop shop or a emergency shelter. Another thing that Marion County had, because again, we are a very spiritual and faith-led community, we had a lot of faith-based organizations. And at one time, all of our shelters were owned and operated by faith-based organizations. Well, as a preacher, our faith can also be roadblocks to some. Because if we have a shelter, let's say if I have a shelter and I said, well, you can't come to the shelter if you're drinking or smoking or on drugs. Well, they're out there.
Yeah,
there's nowhere for them to go.
That's the end of as you said, a locking.
And they call those barriers. Well, I'm so glad to announce that we have now opened a low barrier shelter. So regardless, now here's the thing: we need those faith-based shelters. Just like we need, there's a scripture that I live by. It says, becoming all things to all men so that you can win one. We need them all. We need the faith-based. We need the low barriers. We need, men's shelters. We need women's shelters. We need children's shelters. We need them all.
Right.
And someone would say, well, why do we need them all? We did a count. We only have 312. Well, we might only have 312 on paper, but that's all we were able to count. How about those who did not make it easy to be counted?
Sure.
Or which definition of homelessness are you using?
Sure.
The state, we have one for HUD, but Board of Education has a different one. Couch surfing could be considered homelessness, and all you need is the person whose couch that belongs to get upset with you one day and
you're homeless.
You're homeless, But so there's a lot of different things that, go into it. But I will say, and hopefully we'll go over it a little bit, some of the areas that we are making strides here in Marion County.
Well, you're describing homelessness in a sense as a large social puzzle that the pieces are not all evident and don't always all fit. Let me read something to you that I came across in some of my research. And this is according to the local Joint Office of Homelessness Prevention. There were 378 homeless people documented in Marion County as of January 2023. This figure included those staying in shelters. Then this number came from the annual point-in-time count, the PIT count, as they call it, of the homeless population conducted each January under the auspices of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD. An article in the Ocala magazine entitled Ocala's Homeless by Brad Rogers stated that, quotes, "Those who work with the homeless agree that the real number is higher, with some saying it is growing, noting that the pit count does not count people who are couch surfing with a friend or a relative or living in motels." This is kind of key to what you're saying.
And I will add to that, and the pit count, which very important it is, but it doesn't. The pit count is where did you stay the night of the account?
Right.
Okay. So
it's a snapshot.
It's a snapshot, And at one time, even HUD even allowed you to kind of, for lack of a better word, fluff that number, because it's impossible to say that, you were able to count on, let's say, the 23rd of December, every homeless person that was out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
But as the article says, and those of us that have worked with homeless in some way, shape, or form, we're only talking about those who were unsheltered at all. But there's many organizations out there that is paying for hotel vouchers for homeless families.
Sure.
You go to I would say probably about 60% of every hotel motel in Marion County. There's somebody there that is staying, that is homeless, that is either the cost is being covered by some organization, or they are what I call the working homeless. Because Marion County, I am bi-coastal at this time, so I'm in LA and Ocala. We're nothing like Los Angeles as far as housing costs, but Marion County housing costs has gone substantially up in the 10 years that I have lived here, And so, though Ocala is growing like it has to, it should grow. It should grow. Everything around it's growing. If it doesn't do nothing but grow because we're touching something else that's growing, it has to grow. Finances, the everyday cost of living, there's one thing I think that our CEP and different organizations are doing phenomenal jobs of bringing large businesses to, but I always think about the support employees, the McDonald's workers, the restaurant workers. They're not making $40,000 a year. Right. If they're making 15, 16, 18, 20, maybe $1,000 a year, and that could be two individuals working, So there's even been new terms, thrown, there's called, affordable housing.
Sure.
And then there's this new term that they're using, workforce housing, and Marion as a whole, the builders in Marion as a whole are building towards workforce housing, affordable for the workforce. Well, what about the support force or the no job groups?
Right. That has to be calculated.
It has to be calculated too, and it's organizations like the Continuum of Care, the Joint Office on Homelessness, and different interfaiths, and Saving Mercy, and Shepherd's Lighthouse in Bellevue, and the different churches that are looking at those numbers and those individuals and coming around the table. At one time it was almost like playing cards. Hey, do you have a house over there? Do you have a house over there? Well, do you know anybody that can take two people? Can you know somebody that can take 8? And so those are the things that go on behind the scenes that most people don't realize that are happening every day, not just 20 hours a week, full time, overtime. There's a group of us, and I won't name names, that, we'll call each other in the middle of the night. Hey, I got somebody, do you have, can you put them up in the hotel for a night or two till we can get them into a program to get them going? There's all kind of programs and things going on. And for those that are really concerned about the homeless initiative, please, I did talk to the joint office this morning. The website is being revamped. They're rebranding, and they're really trying to get the information out. But please get in touch with the Continuum of Care on Homelessness here, because there's all kind of awesome ways to get involved and help and support.
True enough. And just another consideration. Okay. We live in Florida.
Yes.
We are subject to hurricanes on a seasonal basis. In fact, this country in general is experiencing some inflections, whether it's wildfires, flooding. People flow out of the places where the disaster hits. And in Florida, we have our own concerns. But you had spoken at one point, too, about seasonal, where people would be getting here one way or another for the winter. and then traveling back, whether it's north or to another place, for a different season. There's a pulse of homelessness or people in need of some sort of shelter that we're not necessarily prepared for. It's its own little mini social disaster. And that's only to say that this issue is going to grow.
Right. Well, that's even to bring that up. I think about the hurricane. That's the partnership that we have with Marion County Public Schools. During hurricane seasons, or when we get shelter in place, they literally will turn different high schools or different school auditoriums around for emergency shelters. It's a partnership with our emergency management system and the school board. And but then, let's say the warning is only a day or so. Well, those children are displaced for even a day, maybe, because they have to then disinfect the building and clean it back up and things of that nature. But it's such a need that it's all hands on deck type situation that's going on right now.
Just have to be prepared for it,
Exactly.
and you can't be over-prepared.
Never.
Can we turn a little bit more to some reporting on affordable housing?
Yes.
Let me read you this from a January 22nd, 2025, Ocala Gazette article by Jennifer Hunt Murdy entitled, "What We Really Need is True Affordable Housing." And it was highlighting the responses from a City of Ocala, Marion County Continuum of Care Program meeting of the Nonprofit Business Council. Are you familiar with all that took place on that one in January?
Not all that took place, but the conversation's not new.
Yeah. To generalize about it, and for the benefit of our listeners, affordable housing, one definition, is defined as housing that costs no more than 30% of a household's income, including utilities. While housing developments and multi-use apartment buildings continue to be built all over Ocala and Marion County, a minority of these meet the affordable housing definition. This is what you touched on already, that we have the workforce housing, we have the homeless housing, and we have the business housing. Well, I should say
Traditional.
The traditional, if you will. And in your experience, what are the main factors for the lack of affordable housing here, even though we're trying to make up for that?
Well, first of all, the cost of building is not cheap.
Not anymore.
Someone was sharing with me the other day that it costs almost the same amount to build a tiny home as it does a traditional size home. A tiny home is anything really a tiny home is anything under 1,000 square feet, which is interesting to me because, 30, 40 years ago, 900 to 1,100, square feet was about the size of the traditional home. Now we have homes that are 2,000 square feet, things of that nature, because mankind, we just like space. But the same things that are needed for a tiny home are needed for the traditional size home. So, as a builder, is it cost effective for me to build affordable housing? Can I not just make a profit? Can I break even? Building, affordable housing. And a lot of times affordable housing for homelessness can take on the persona of lesser quality home too. So you don't want to put someone in a home to give them a little more self-worth, and then, the quality of it's not what it needs to be too. It's an economic conversation, and it's not a conversation that could be answered by, just what you think is best for people, because the truth is, on every level, everybody's trying to live, I think that our political climate has a lot to do with it, along with our actual environmental climates. I laughingly say here, when I visit other coastal communities in other states, how, it's mandated that they build houses above the floodplain, or the house has to be on stilts or things of that nature. Unless it's changed just recently, here in the state of Florida, you can still build on the coast on a concrete slab. Well,
at your own risk.
At your own risk. The builder builds it, you buy it, and so you'll see all up and down the coast, almost multi-million-dollar houses underwater. Well, I was in Myrtle Beach not too long ago, and on the coastline, I was like, wow, all these beautiful houses. And then I realized they're all on stilts. They're all built up. They've been skirted in a beautiful way or whatever, but but that's an extra cost.
Yeah.
Who pays for that cost? That cost is, how is that regulated? That's something that can be regulated in Tallahassee. But is that, so everything has, and I try so hard not to be political, everything, but it's not just politics. It's also communities. How does our communities ingratiate others that are not necessarily like them?
That's an important question. In fact, what do some residents and neighborhoods say about the construction of affordable housing near where they live?
Right.
Obviously, that's not always welcome. And is it simply a matter of saying, well, we'll go someplace else? Or how can we integrate this? Because I think there is a misperception of it. The homeless that they're seeing on the streets are not, as you say, the single mother with kids living in her car, the senior citizens that are no longer able to afford the rentals or the mortgage on a house. These are part of our community now. And it's not simply we don't want their kind there. They are us.
I was part of a conversation not too long ago, and I was like, oh, my goodness, it just takes education. People really need to be educated. First of all, to build affordable housing doesn't mean that, someone could just throw up anything.
Right.
The county and the cities have, through their land development, there's certain things that have to be in place just so that you can, build of anything, whether it's a house, one story or a single structure, multifamily use. There's easements and there's, tree lines and rights of ways, but the thinking might be, and I won't name, there was a community that a developer wanted to build, a multi-level apartment unit. And in the contract of it, there was going to be so much affordable housing, so much, for seniors, so many, different demographics. It was a really great project, but the community was up in arms. And I was like, why are they up in arms? So, well, they'll be, we have, bad people will be. Well, first of all, the apartment complex is, though it's going to be a little more affordable, it's not going to be, we didn't say it was subsidized housing or if it was going to be $2 in rent. These were not going to be they were going to be affordable, but, they really was not. Yeah. Everybody's not going to be able to afford to live there anyway. So it wasn't like, you're just going to get somebody that was going to be able to move in for $5 a month. We were still talking
about. They have a stake in the property that they're living in.
They have a stake in the property they're living in. And because of the building laws and things of that nature, the apartment complex wouldn't have been nowhere near this. Somebody would have to have binoculars to see into your home. Right. And then you still have tree lines and, noise barriers and retention ponds and walkways and builders now who want to build multi-level or multi-usage, mixed-use housing complexes. They are really trying to be compliant to all of the rules and regulations that cities and counties put in place so that they can build these. And I mean, some of them have, designed like walking trails and wastewater, reusable water, rain, it would just really make the property in the community better.
Indeed.
But the misnomer, the misconception of what it means to have, and they weren't even talking about homelessness then. They were just talking about a multi-unit apartment complex.
Right.
The community was outraged about it. And I think that has to do a lot with misconception, misunderstanding what, high-rise or multi-level apartments look like or could look like or what the city or the government says can be built. And I think that if we could educate, if more people would have these types of conversations or go sit in on a COC meeting or a land development meeting where these things are put, you would realize that some of the things that we are worried about are not. And communities have so much say in what's being built around them, because you can see that by their either praise for something or their outrage against something that, a community can really be part of the expansion and the beautification and the enlargement and tax base. Because now I will say, you get more goods and services around multi-use projects than you do single family dwelling.
Absolutely.
So, it's a catch-22.
There's a benefit that they don't often realize.
Yeah.
While we're on this topic, I'd like to introduce some information about good news, which is the Mercy Village.
Yes.
Currently, there's a 59-unit apartment building under construction, sitting on 2.58 acres on a 10-acre property along West Silver Springs Boulevard, just east of Interstate 75. And currently under construction and I believe due for completion this year. With the intention of building additional affordable housing on this land, the initial segment of Mercy Village should be done this year, and the apartment project is a result of a partnership between Saving Mercy and the Carrefour Supportive Housing. This is a win-win all over. This whole location benefits that section of West Silver Springs Boulevard. And I think if people were to see that, they realize that it looks like any other developmental community. In fact, it's going to have landscaping. It's near an area that's easy access for the residents, and it's a plus to the tax base, ultimately. So that's something that's happening now and will show results this year. And I'm hopeful that as they see the benefit of this, further construction will take place on that. I know you had some points you wanted to bring up too.
I made a phone call this morning. I said, hey, I'm having this thing. I need some right now information. The first annual COC meeting was held with over 180 attendees to learn about the efforts made with the homeless services, which was great and unheard of. It was the first time now we have annual meetings every year, but this was the first time that the annual meeting was more like a showcase and showcased a lot of organizations and things of that nature. So people got to see some of the work, the groups and organizations that are doing a phenomenal job. There's been 130 new affordable housing units approved. And when the COC says affordable housing, we're using not workforce housing, we're using actual affordable housing.
Understood.
79 permanent supportive housing or other supportive housing units opening in December of this year. The Women's Residential Treatment Facility is now open and to begin construction on the Central Receiving Facility scheduled to open in fiscal year 2026. There's a new lower barrier shelter open called Wear Gloves. It's now open. Yeah. And Interfaith has opened its engagement center. So these are all the supportive things that, though we might not see a right now microwave resolve to the homeless issue, little things like this become bigger and bigger as a snowball. Well, which Floridians probably don't know anything about.
That's kind of interesting, yeah.
Right. But the snowball up north rolling downhill in the snow, it gets larger and larger. Right. So, so that's what we're excited about, with homelessness. The care is there, the compassion is there, the sympathy and the empathy is there. Now it's focusing all of those things that we actually create outcomes of it. And I think we're going to see even greater things with that.
Well, part of what we're going to do with this particular episode is we will have comments underneath where we run the episode on our YouTube channel. And we're going to indicate some of the different organizations that we haven't been able to name specifically here, and some of the people that are heading that. This is in some of the reporting that's being done on the Ocala Gazette and the Ocala Star Banner, and across the county here. So we will have that for people too as they want to explore this a little bit more. And I think this is the beginning of a series, as I said.
Wonderful.
Where you're kind of kicking off the overview of homelessness in Marion County and affordable housing solutions, and we'll bring in some of the other people that you've been working with, and whether they are from the government, whether they're faith-based, or they are nonprofits. And I don't think people have a sense of how wide that is, so I'll encourage our viewers to look at those comments and look at some of the sites where they can find more information about this. And
I will say COC meetings, because of the interlocking partnership with city and government, they're all sunshine. So the COC meetings are recorded. There, you can watch them live when they're happening. You can watch them later. The transcripts of them. The agenda has to be posted on whether our website or in the paper 30 days prior to. And if you really have a heart and a concern, or just even a passing, hey, what's going on with homelessness? Please, I would suggest each and every one of you to get involved. Okay?
Absolutely. Change starts with one person, and that's what they decide and what they do. Speaking of that, I'd like to know a little bit about your own journey to your religious calling and your background. You've already mentioned your grandfather. The influences in your life that have brought you to this point and your advocacy. Could you just give us a little background?
Well, I tell people I've been in church all of my life, even though church hasn't always been in me. I come from a very spiritual family, religious family, history, go back years on both sides, mother and father. Even though there were times where mother or father were in church or going to church or things of that nature, we were still my sister and I were still made to go, whether it was somebody come pick us up or we rode with somebody or we walked to a church down the street. I've been in church all of my life. So my spiritual journey has been one of service, because that is really what really keeps me going from a child till now, 50 plus years old, helping others, being involved in others, evolution of growth and development, understanding that, scriptures that say things like, once you've been converted, strengthen your brethren, not really knowing everything, but, by this all men will really know that you're my disciple by the love that you show one towards another. Those are the types of things that have been kind of my guarding and guiding principles. Have I been perfect? No. Have I made mistakes? Yes. But owning them, being honest with them, and 9 times out of 10, some of the things that I've done has been because my zeal of wanting to help others, or, not thinking, hey, you know what? You can't help everybody, but you can always at least point somebody to somebody. So that's kind of my involvement. Like I said, I've been in church all my life. I started out in music and singing and worship leader. And
you were born in Columbus, Ohio?
Born in Columbus, Ohio.
And when did you leave Columbus, Ohio? Okay,
let's see how it started. In Columbus, I didn't leave until I left for school. I left for college. I went to Los Angeles, California.
Wow.
Spent some time out there, dropped out of school and moved to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, where I took my first pastorate at 21 years old. And I jokingly say that whenever the Lord makes me a millionaire, I'm going to give them all their money back because I was just practicing on them. After that, moved to Charleston, West Virginia, and pastored in Charleston, West Virginia, almost 16 years. Started a church on a college campus. Matter of fact, we're Tabernacle of Praise. We're celebrating 25 years this year. This October, we'll be going back to West Virginia where it all started and kind of having like a reunion convention. But 25 years ago, started the church there. For 16 years, we were there. And then we moved back to California for a little while and then came here and been here for this past January marked 10 years of pastoring. Not only have we been pastoring, I've always been very active in the community. Not only was I involved with homelessness here, I was the past president of the Marion County branch of the NAACP and worked with them in civil rights and social rights issues and was honored to be part of them. Go Marion County branch, one of the best branches in the world, and what they're doing. And now just continuing that, just my life. I just love the Lord. I tell everyone, I've enjoyed my faith walk because just seeing the twinkle in other people's eyes when they make those turns in life that changes their lives for the good, the better, just to know that we had some menial part in that, leading someone to Christ is just awesome for me.
Well, it's also appreciated that your perspective is national in the truest sense of the word. You've gone cross country. You've spent time and commitment in a lot of areas. And we're very fortunate to have you here doing this work, along with the many others that, as it seems, Florida is a magnet for many things.
Yes.
But there's many good things going on here. And Marion County, I can't reiterate enough. I see from what I've read and what you're saying has made strides in this area particularly, and in other areas that as we grow, we are growing in balance.
Yes.
Are trying to. And it's not often easy with hurricanes and an economy that some struggle with, and also the fact that we all age and we encounter the difficulties, and yet we are there as a community for others.
Yeah, Florida is, it's an interesting place. I told somebody recently, I said, Florida is an interesting place. You either love it or you don't love it. It's just one of those two. There's like really very few in-betweens. But the great things I love about Florida is that it is a area where faith can grow. Faith, there are some places where you're like, okay, I just don't have faith in people. Faith can grow here because there are pockets of wonderful people doing wonderful things. I think one of the biggest problems that Marion County has is until organizations and outlets like this, podcasts and things of that nature, we don't do a well enough job sharing the good things that we do. For years, when I first moved here, only time you heard about Marion County or Ocala in the news or something like that was something negative. You couldn't turn on your TV and see what was happening in Ocala unless it was something negative. But now, in the day and time of social media and people being able to kind of tell their own stories, we're starting to see some of the great things that are happening. And I could go down the list talking about some of the great organizations and different people that I've worked with that I think everybody should know about and get behind and support, because there's some people doing some phenomenal things like this podcast that needs support. None of this is free. There's cost. There's a time, there's talent, and there's treasure that has to be invested in all of these things. And I think as we continue to come together, hear about what's really going on, hear about those who are doing wonderful quality jobs at making dents at it. And if we would begin to support those organizations or those individuals who are doing great things, we'll see even a greater change at an exponential rate here in Marion County.
That's a great summary to what we've been talking about today. And this doesn't have to be the end of this conversation, because not only would we love to have you back at some point, but some of the people that you've been working with and we've identified as community leaders and advocates. So we've been talking to the Reverend James Stockton, a community activist and advocate for affordable housing and helping the homeless here in Marion County. Thank you so much for taking the time to inform us on these issues and the future of Marion County.
I appreciate you.
We want to engage with you, our audience. Please send us your comments and ideas at marionforumgroup@gmail.com on this topic and others you may care about. You can always view this and other episodes on our YouTube channel at Marion Forum Group. Check out our Facebook page also, and thank you for joining us. Reverend James, appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a blessed one.